and Mr. Cody Johnson. And before we get started on opening remarks, we've asked, the commander's asked to give another few words.
Actually, this is short and sweet. I do have an alibi. I fully support all law enforcement, which is easy for me to say because I am a retired 30-plus year DOD special agent. Yes, my badge credentials are tops. It says retired, but I got called back up for 4 years to go teach at the schoolhouse. Apparently, yeah, I'm not that bright. But I got 2 words for you guys, and again, I'm from Texas. That's all of y'all. Tonight, respect and civility. Remember those. Peace out. All right.
All right, so just like our other candidates a while ago, y'all are going to get 3 minutes for opening statements. You've got a choice. The podium's there. You can use this if you like. But our first opening statement is Ms. Shelby Slauson.
Thank y'all for coming tonight. I'm Shelby Slauson. I am a born and raised Central Texas girl. My parents, like so many of y'all, raised me to know the value of a hard day's work, and I am an off the seat and on my feet kind of gal. I have been married for 22 years to my wonderful husband right here. We are raising 2 small Texans of our own who are our pride and joy. I am a fierce and unapologetic conservative. I believe firmly in limited government, low taxes, reasonable regulation. As a pistol-packing mama in defending the Second Amendment, protecting innocent life, and celebrating personal responsibility. Now, you and I live in the best part of the greatest state in the nation, and it's because of our people out here who are working for a living, raising their families, paying their bills, minding their business, and honoring their God. We are a staunchly conservative district that stretches from Comanche, Coryell, Erath, Hamilton, McCullough Mills, San Saba, and Somervell counties. And out here in our deeply red heart of Texas, we elected President Trump with 81%. We elected Senator Cruz with 82%. It's because of rural Texas that we have a Senator Cruz today instead of a Senator O'Rourke. It's us. So it's inconsistent for us when, for the last 8 years, we've been represented in Austin by someone who consistently ranks at the bottom of the conservative index as the 2nd most liberal Republican in Texas. It's just not in line with the strong conservative principles and values that we have out here. Now, we get a lot of advertising. Our mailboxes and our TV are flooded with claims that sound pretty good on the surface. But when we evaluate an actual voting record, and that's what this is about, a voting record, the work product of the people, the votes don't line up with the mail that we receive. When we see that over $1 million has been received from special interest groups outside our district and outside our state, we start to connect some dots to see why those things are happening. The bottom line here is when we live in one of the reddest districts in the entire state, we should lead like courageous conservatives, like we are. And we're not doing that now. Now, it's not a time where we can sit quietly on the sidelines anymore. We have to stand up. We see what's happening in Washington. Well, the same thing is being echoed down in Austin. We can do so much better. My name is Shelby Slauson. I look forward to your questions, Jack, and I'm humbly asking for your votes to serve you as your next state representative. Thank you.
Representative Sheffield.
Good evening. My name is J.D. Sheffield. I'm a family practice doctor, and I've been practicing in Coryell County for 27 years. The last 2 years here in Cove at Family Medicine Clinic down on Walker Boulevard. With me tonight is my wife, Janice. Between us, we have 1 son, 3 grandchildren, beautiful grandchildren, as my wife says, they're beautiful and perfect. Now, it's been my honor to be your state representative for 4 terms. And we are asking humbly for your vote to go back and serve a 5th term for the issues that are going to be coming up and questions to come. Let me say a couple of things off the bat. Do you have any interest at all about what happens in Austin with certain issues? If you do, then you have a special interest in Austin. And when you come down there, you're going to be speaking to people like us, and we're going to be listening to you. We're going to be asking questions, and we're going to be running with your issues and fighting for what you believe in. Now let's talk about a couple of things that have already been mentioned. $1 million, but that's been spread over 5 elections. You see, you can get down there and sit on the floor day after day and never stand for anything and take the safe votes. Take the votes that won't get you an opponent in the primary. Just go with the flow. But that's political expediency. I don't do that. We checked the numbers today. I vote with the Republican caucus 98.8% of the time. 98.8% of the time with the Republican caucus. That's a pretty good number. So I look forward to the questions, and I want to respond to Commissioner Matthews' question about unfunded mandates. That's an excellent point. We had a bill outlawing unfunded mandates last session. It sailed right through the House easily, and we voted for it, of course. It got over to the Senate, and it died. Don't know why it died over there, because it was such a good idea and a good bill. It should come back again, and hopefully it will. So I look forward to the questions. I look forward to your questions to me after we're done here tonight. Jack, I turn it back to you.
All right.
You may raise your hand if you own a gold Chrysler minivan. Would you please talk to these gentlemen up here, please? They would like to talk to you. Oh, you didn't do anything, as far as we know yet. Mr. Cody Johnson.
This is the first time I haven't had to use the podium. We're going to do things a little different tonight. I'm going to ask y'all a couple of questions. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the veterans in the building and all the first responders. Will y'all give them a hand, please? I don't know about y'all, but I've had a really bad day. Really bad day. There's been some accusations made about me, but I'm going to ask y'all a question. Do you love President Trump? That's the best we got? Do you think President Trump has been treated fairly through his presidency? No. Do y'all know Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh? Yes, sir. Think he was a good pick? Yes, sir. Do you think he was treated fairly? No. He was pretty bad, huh? Well, last night, my family, me, had some accusations. And I'm just going to tell you like it is. It's bullshit. I'm pissed. And we have people in the crowd that is spreading stuff that's not true. But when you bring my family into it, you cross the line. I am a professional cowboy. I rope for a living. I rope for competition. If I don't go fast enough, I don't win, correct? That's right. I gotta practice. I have to get better at my game. I'm not gonna come up with an accusation 10 days before, not yesterday, and then all of a sudden decide today I'm gonna come up with it and use it 4 or 5 days before election. This is political sabotage. It's the biggest bunch of crap that I've ever seen. JD, me and you don't agree on much, but we have a mutual respect for each other, and in this process we have become friends. But we don't have to agree. Y'all, we live in a troubled time. Our government is screwed up. If we allow this to continue to happen, we're not gonna get any better. We've got to change things, y'all. It's simple as that. Take care of your family. Don't spread stuff that's not true. The truth is coming out. But well, I'm gonna say it once again. What's happening is bullshit. And I'm not gonna take it anymore. Thank you.
Shelby Slauson. May I call you Shelby? Shelby. First question is, matter of fact, the commander here said a word that kind of reminded me of something. Have y'all ever heard the word chubbing? Chubbing is something that's done on the floor in the House, all right? And when one representative doesn't like another representative's bill, all they have to do is speak for 10 minutes and the bill is dead. It is dead. That's how simple it is. And you've got Republicans chubbing Democrats, and unfortunately, Republicans chubbing Republicans, killing our own teammates' bills. 2 sessions ago, you had the Mother's Day Massacre, right? It was Mother's Day? Yeah. Mother's Day Massacre. One representative, well, eventually it was a bunch of them, but killed 150 bills in 10 minutes, just because they didn't agree with some of their colleagues on something. So, if elected, what would you do to work with your colleagues in the House and try to return civility to the House?
That's a fair question. I think we saw some of that same thing happening with the Safe Chick-fil-A bill this last session with the chubbing. So I have a long history of working with a wide variety of other leaders. I'm a very collaborative person, and over the years have served from economic development to annexation, education foundation, a lot of places like that, by selection and appointment by other leaders in the community. So I have a long history of being able to work with people with diverse opinions. That doesn't mean that I don't have strong opinions of my own, but there's a difference between talking about issues and making things about personalities. And part of what we're seeing right here is the inability to draw that distinction. So to bring about that crossing the aisle and working with other people, you have to have someone with the personality and the demeanor to be able to separate and articulate issues from people. And I have a long history of doing that. Just a few years ago, in fact, I received an award in our community as a woman of distinction, being recognized for that very kind of leadership and service. Thank you.
Having been in the atmosphere that Jack is describing, I need to tell you that I don't chub. I don't agree with it. What I do, when there's someone who has a bill that I don't like, I'll go to them ahead of time and say, I don't like your bill. Here's the reason why. Here's the section I don't like. Can we work on a compromise to make this mutually advantageous to us? You can have principled compromises without compromising on principles. And I've made a pattern and a habit of doing that. And so when people see me coming up to them, they know I'm not coming up to them to jump down their throat or to embarrass them publicly or to take their results of months of hard work and wipe it out in one instance, sometimes just for petty personality differences. So I'm against chubbing. I've never engaged in it. I believe in working with people. I believe in reaching across the aisle and working with them and having that responded to in kind. And that's how things get done in Texas. In the good old days when that used to be, people tell me that you would have Republicans and Democrats come to Austin. They would put aside their differences to work together to make Texas a better place for all. I still try to adhere to that in my practice. Thank you, Jack.
Number one, it's about relationships. I've never been out Austin to sit during session. I'm not a politician. but I understand relationships. But a part of the problem is the swamp. When you have so much special interest money that's dictating what you do, how can you get anything done? I have not taken any interest money. I'm not going to. I'm not going to cheat to get what I want. Thank you.
Representative Sheffield, you know, after our last forum, some folks made some good observations. We've got 3 entrepreneurial people up here, and unless we just weren't paying attention, nobody spoke about pro-business legislation. So, being entrepreneurs yourself, what would you like to get accomplished in this next session to help out Coryell County and the entire district and the entire state in regards to pro-business legislation to make it easier for the job creators to fulfill their duties and increase revenue in the counties?
Let's start with lowering property taxes, okay? And the state is doing their part on that by this last session. We increased the state part of public education from 38% to 45% to say, take some of the strain off local and property taxes. Combine that with the homestead exemption increase that we passed, and that's a significant step in the right direction. Now the next thing to do is to cut regulation. And that's where these unfunded mandates cause so much problem and so much trouble. And as I've already said, we in the House saw that. We passed a law through our House to stop the unfunded mandates. Because with unfunded mandates come unnecessary regulations. We have too much regulation as it is already. We don't need any more. We need to cut what we have. And I think that's one of the best things that President Trump has done in his term, is to cut regulation for so many businesses. Third thing, to help the economy and business of Coryell County, we have to have good schools. We have to have good public schools. That generation in those schools is our next generation. They're our most important generation. We have to have them, by the time they graduate, either college ready, vocational ready, military ready, but we need them especially to be lifetime ready. And they need to know how to be good citizens. And so we need to educate those folks locally and provide them business opportunities so they stay local and don't move away. So those are the 3 things that come top of my mind. Thank you.
Well, out of the 3 of us up here, I'm pretty safe to say that I've got the most employees. I started 4 years ago with 3 employees. Today we have 120. I said a while ago that me and JD don't agree on much, but I kind of agree with you on this one, JD. We got to lower property taxes. The way we do that is fix the unfunded mandates. If we mandate, we got to fund. If we can't fund it, we got to quit doing the mandates. But we have to give people, kids, young people, a reason to stay in our communities, to build a future here. You know, Governor Perry, he made 10 phone calls a day to all over the world to bring industries to Texas. That's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to bring industry to town. I'm curious to know how many employees, how many jobs that the 2 candidates up here beside me have brought to Texas. I brought 120 plus. I know how to do things. I'm like President Trump. I'm a businessman. I am not a politician. So we can do it.
So for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to serve on the Economic Development Authority of Stephenville. And what we do is that recruitment, retention, expansion of other businesses. I'm looking at you because I think you say on a similar entity down here. Sorry, thank you. But with particular regard to the legislature, a very specific example, y'all are talking about unfunded mandates. Well, that's happening in the private sector too, with municipalities forcing some of those mandates out on employers. For example, San Antonio, Dallas, and I believe it's Austin have ordinances that require private employers to provide paid sick leave to their employees. Well, that's a great benefit to provide, and if you're able to do that as a private employer, that makes you competitive in a market. But when you have a municipality telling all employers that you have to do that, it's not a free market anymore. Now we're interfering with capitalism, and you're creating a situation where those bright minds with that entrepreneurial spirit now have an additional hurdle to even opening the doors and turning on the lights and hiring some Texans. So last session in the Senate, Senate Bill 15 was presented to end that practice where municipalities could no longer do that. They had a lot of testimony down there, and it made it through the Senate. There were a couple other similar bills. But when it got over to the House, it fell apart. Post-session, Attorney General Paxton has filed lawsuits in each of those cities to stay that practice for now. But it has to come up again in the next session, because it's not just limited to this particular issue with paid sick leave. From there, we start getting over into increasing minimum wage, like we see happening out in the Pacific Northwest and over in the Northeast, and that starts interfering substantially with our markets. So those are some of the issues.
Mr. Johnson, how many people in this room have benefited from the Hazelwood Act? All right. So the Hazelwood Act provides college money for veterans. All right. So I wanted to get at least a question in on budget, because we do have a fresh crowd tonight. 2/3 of the budget's already spoken for before session ever starts. So they spend their entire session giving up 1/3 of your money, 1/3 of the budget, all right? So would you support, this is the same question for everybody, would you support continuing to fund the Hazelwood Act, and what would you do to contribute to the overall building of the budget to mitigate our risk of those unfunded mandates?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know, I'm not familiar with the Hazelwood bill, but I will do everything I can to fund as many projects like that as we can, because we have to that's the part about bringing jobs and stuff back to the communities. We have to have funding for teacher programs, nursing programs, business programs. I will know more about this question when I get home tonight, but I didn't have time to go down there and spend it at Austin and seeing this committee and that committee and this bill and that bill. I was home working, making a living, taking care of my 120 employees. Thank you.
If I understand your question right, it's what things could we get rid of, what things would we not get rid of, kind of budgetary priorities.
And would you support continuing
Specifically support the Hazelwood Act? Okay. Hazelwood Act, no objections to it. There are some places where I think that we can make a difference though. And we talked about this last time in the last one. We have to be real about what we want to fund as Texans, because we fund things like an arts commission and a movie and film commission. Well, are those proper roles of government? I would argue to you that they're not. That as a conservative who believes in limited government and low taxes, we do a lot of extra things that aren't those core functions of our infrastructure and our security and our law enforcement and our education. So I think that there are plenty of places where we can dial back the interference of government and the cost to all of us. There's also some, even though I serve on an economic development authority, I'll tell you that I would be a fan of that just being eliminated across the board at a federal level, so that we're not using taxpayer dollars for economic development where we're competing against private enterprise. But the reality of the situation is now, if we're not competing, we may be losing out to the Californias or the New Yorks. So I think there's plenty of places that we could back off at a government level and save ourselves some money. Thank you.
Hazelwood Act is a very necessary, very good act. It depends on how much of this you feel like we're going to need to pay for now versus later. Now, I was speaking with retired Admiral William McRaven. Remember that name? JSOC? Saddam Hussein, a very learned man. He was in the office, and I asked him, what should we do with Hazelwood? Because at that time we were arguing on the floor. How many people do we serve with it? Who do we serve with it? Who do we give the scholarships to? How do we rate them? It was all up in the air. It went from kids, current service people, to people who had ever served inside the state of Texas, even for 1 or 2 years, to be on the scholarship program. I thought Admiral McRaven had the best answer. He said, we pay for 1 scholarship per family, and we make sure they go all the way through with it. And that's the least we should be able to do, is pay for 1 kid per family and go all the way through. Now, on the issue about other government things, the unfunded mandates comes up again. It's always there, and we just need to stop them. But I do need to reply to the film and arts thing in Texas. We do spend some Texas taxpayer dollars to fund some film and arts thing. It more than pays for itself in the state of Texas with all the movies and all the TV shows coming here to film. We have sometimes between a 7-to-1 return on our investment to a 12-to-1 return on our investment on this film commission. So when we're making money like that, bringing that into the private economy, more than making up for what we spend, I think that's a good thing to do.
Ms. Lawson, a lot of us feel like we're personally funding the school systems when we get our tax bills every year all by ourselves. It's going to continue to be a topic about school choice. Should your tax dollars follow the student to other alternatives than public school systems when we're still trying to figure out how to pay for our public school systems? What's your stance on school choice?
I do not support vouchers, not at all, for the reason that you're just talking about. The tax dollars then follow over into private choices. And I'm fully behind our public schools. My kids are in public school. I'm a product of Stephen ISD myself. The issues that we see in our public schools, I don't think generate from our local public schools. I think they're coming from Austin, I hate the word mandates at this point, that's all we're hearing tonight, but things like standardized testing that are really interfering in our classrooms. I do support the right of a parent to decide within your family what's right for you. Do you want a homeschool? Do you want a public school? Do you want a private school? Make your own choice, but the tax dollars aren't going to follow that choice. I think that it would be problematic both in the way that it would create funding issues within our public schools, because our overhead isn't going to change just because a student moves to a different district or to a private school or to a homeschool. And I think that we have to also recognize that when the dollars begin to follow that private choice, the government isn't very far behind. So those families that I know who choose to homeschool, thank you, or to private school are usually making that decision because there's either something within the public schools, like standardized testing, that they don't like,